Hello and welcome to the Irish NFL Show. My name is Shane Brennan and we are continuing with our previews of each of the 8 NFL divisions. I suppose after watching so much of the new Netflix documentary Any Given Saturday about how college football really brings us South alive, is only right that we continue with our previews after following from the AFC South earlier this week to talk about the NFC South. And I'm delighted to be joined tonight by Brian O'Leary, Kieran Boyle and Kieran O'Donovan as we take a look at a division which, similar to the AFC South, is always classed as winnable, which is code for there's a few teams in here which could be a bit of a mix, and none of them really embody that spirit more than the Atlanta Falcons. Kieran Boyle, I'll start with you on this. The ATL Falcons are an interesting case because if anyone's going to go and take this division away from the Bucs, really it's going to be them. It relies on a lot of things. The O-line is a big strength. We know that. Michael Penix Jr., we're not sure what to really expect from him. He played 3 games last season. Interesting, he was involved in a fight against the Titans during practice ahead of the preseason game they're playing at the weekend. But there's a lot that could go right and a lot that could go wrong, and it's very difficult to realize what side of that coin are going to land on.
Yeah, I mean, the similarity. There's a lot of similarities between the AFC South too. I mean, you got two teams kind of at the top of the pile and 2 that are kind of playing the also rans. But for me, the Falcons are, and I've said it plenty of times, and I'll say it again. To me, the Falcons are the Jets of the NFC and even the South. They look good on paper. A lot of stuff is talked about them, but when push comes to shove, they just do not get it done. They do not get over the line for whatever reason. I mean, we've watched quarterback with Cousins from last year. There was a variety of issues going on, not just with him, but GM Terry Fontenot. I'm not a huge fan of what he's done with that team in the past few years, notwithstanding the draft this year. But it's just they always have that hype coming in, but they're never able to put it all together. I mean, when you look at that offense, John Robinson, Kyle Pitts, and London. I mean, that's a great tandem right there. I mean, that's 3 players right there who can walk onto any team in the NFL and be hugely productive. Problem is, they've got that issue of quarterback. Who's going to play? I mean, it looks like it's Penix. Is it going to be Cousins at this stage? It could be that could flip flop too if Penix doesn't perform. And the defense. What the big problem with the Falcons, in my opinion, is they don't have an identity on defense. They're pretty on offense. They'll put up a lot of points. We remember that game against Tampa, and especially a lot of those NFC South rivalry games with the Saints. They put up tons of points. It's a slob knocker. It's back and forth, and their identity doesn't lend itself to being tough and physical. And what they did in the draft this year is they went out and they got 2 DNs and two defensive players that are going to hopefully shore that up for them. James Pierce and Jalen Walker, 2 really highly touted players on defense, and their hope is that they turn that identity around and make them a tougher, more physical team. Again, with the Falcons, who are you going up against? You're going up against Tampa, and do they have ultimately similar to the Jaguars question with the Texans? Do they have enough weapons to overturn that deficit they had last year? Did look pretty decent at the time. In October, November, they kind of flattered to deceive, and then it kind of came apart, and it just didn't happen for them. I can see a similar season this year for the Falcons. I just think that there's too many variables on offense for me for it not to happen. I think it's for me it's the Fontenot leading from there. I do like Raheem Morris as a coach. I think he's got a lot going for him. I think he coaches a good team, but I just don't rate the Falcons. I think there's too many issues. Defense, like I said, I do like the pickups in the draft, but I don't think they're going to start contributing straight away. James Pierce was, I don't want to say a light DN, but he might take some work to get ready for the league. The Penix, the completion rate, that worries me. He was 58% completion rate for his games when he played last year. That's not going to work in the league. And can their pass rush be the factor? That's really it. Those are the 2 main questions for me when it all comes to it. And will overcoming those issues be enough to pip Tampa in the division?
Yeah, Kieran O'Donovan, it's interesting you mentioned the pass rush because when you look at what are the weaknesses of this team, because the questionables and the 50-50s are, I think a lot of those are on offense because they have talent, but we're not sure on scheme. They have the offense, but we're not sure on quarterback. The defense, I think, is a bit easier to read because the pass rush is an area that they were really weren't great at. They were in the bottom 3 in pass rush, bottom 3 in pressure rate, bottom 3 in pass rush win rate. Didn't really pick up much in the free agency. Don't have a lot of identity there. And again, we see a lot in this league that if a defense has an identity and that they're a great pass defense, or they're an aggressive front, or they know how to zonal mark or man mark with an exceptional level, that changes the team, which are also rounds or potential division winners, into somebody we're talking about in a Super Bowl conversation. I just don't know if I see that with this Atlanta Falcons team on the defensive side of the ball. And that's going with all of the 50-50s and the maybes and the what ifs on offense, starting mainly with Michael Penix.
Yeah, and I'm kind of looking at it a little bit differently to you guys. I think back to Temple Bar there during the draft at, I don't know, what was it, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, when Atlanta were one of the teams that gave us some of that excitement late on. They traded back into the first round, and they obviously they laid down a marker in terms of what their intentions were, and it was to address the pass rush. So look, Kieran is better served to speak on the draft picks, being our college football expert. But Jalen Walker and James Pierce are highly touted guys who it is thought can come in and make a difference, both of them in year one. They've also brought in Divine Diablo, a linebacker coming in from Vegas, is looking like a leader. Again, this is according to reports on the ground. So look, if even 2 out of the three of those guys hit, there's a little step that they can make in making their defense a little bit more impactful, a little bit more serviceable. And then I do think that it's not going to be this revolving door we speak of. I think the keys are going to be handed to Michael Penix, and then, barring disaster, I think he's going to keep the job for the season, to the extent that Kirk could finish the season on a different roster, depending on who goes looking or who goes down during the season. But I think this is going to be Michael Penix's team. And that's going to bring that stability. He did show that he has quality in his play towards the end of the season, where there was that instability, and they were a team that were in control of the division for a spell and were contending again right up to the last week or two to win that division. So they don't need to make a huge improvement. They just need to improve and hope that the Bucs stay the same, or even maybe take a step back. And I'll speak to that in a little while. We know the offensive line is going to be good. As Kieran said, he mentioned Bijan Robinson, one of the better backs in the league. Drake London, again, a guy who's has huge talent. Kyle Pitts, he's a guy who I think people have fallen into the trap in terms of drafting him for fantasy a lot of years, and he's tended to disappoint in terms of his stats. But I know they're working him a lot at receiver during camp, and maybe a lot will depend on the fitness of Darnell Mooney as well. But I don't think that the Falcons need to take too much of a step forward, and just that little bit of stability at quarterback and average to decent play, plus maybe one of those 2 or 3 acquisitions making an impact on defense might be enough for them to sneak this division.
Brian, midnight playing to Georgia for anybody who's sort of planning the postseason?
Oh, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because every year we have these thoughts that you look at them on paper and they've got some really good players in their own right, and you think if they could only put it all together, but the inconsistencies are there, and I can understand why Kieran would allude them as the Jets of the NFC. I was looking at Kyle Pitts. Like Kyle Pitts, when he first came out, we're talking about players this year, tight ends, Loveland to the Bears and Warren. And I remember 4 years ago when Pitts was coming out, everyone was raving about him, how they'd love to get him and what they could do and how they could mold him into a fantastic tight end. 47 receptions last year, 602 yards, 4 touchdowns. Now, you could argue Kirk Cousins wasn't playing at a level to really fulfill his aspirations in terms of how many times he got the ball, but his numbers have never really shot off the charts, maybe with the exception of the first year. Kieran's alluded to whether Darnell Mooney will be ready to start the season. He's a good player in his own right. I think they've got the weapons. And Bijan Robinson in his own right. I agree. I don't think this conversation has come back around over the last week or two in camp. Is it Penix team? Will Kirk Cousins get an opportunity? How long is the leash? This is Michael Penix team. They don't make a move towards the back end of the last season. That GM has to justify that selection last year. He's got to the stage where he'll bring this team forward. I remember Connor Rogers, who's from NBC, who's a good guest of the show, and he spoke about Pierce when we were doing our pre-draft coverage. It was actually the week in question on that Monday prior to the Thursday, and he said James Pierce was a second round at best. So for see him be selected in a move up where they give away next year's first round pick to the Rams at the time was a bit of an eye opener, even at 4 o'clock in the morning for us. And but obviously they've put the chips in. They've gone with Jalen Walker, who in his own right can play defensive end. He can play linebacker. He's like a dual threat, and Pierce, but their sack count was so low last year. This team, for me, will be dictated by how well their defense plays as opposed to their offense. I think the defense will have to step up this year. I think the offense in its own right will still put numbers up, but whether it's good enough will ultimately all come down to how well this defense plays. And they got to get the consistency back within the division. How many times have we seen them lose? Whatever about beating the Bucs or whatever losing to the Bucs, that's one team. But to lose games against the likes of the Panthers, with all due respect, and even the Saints with the rivalry there and what we expect from these teams, the inconsistency has to go away. They need to be challenging the Bucs over the course of the season. I'm not entirely sure whether they can do that come December and be in the playoffs.
Yeah, they're 9-9 against the NFC South in the last 3 years, and that's not a good record considering the teams and opponents that you were facing there. So again, consistency is key for the Falcons, and I just don't know what we can expect from them there. So that will be, I think, one of the more interesting teams to watch as the year progresses.